Hi, welcome to the channel on magnetic energy technology principles applications. This video is about the United States, Earth changes, safe locations, the end of the United States possibly if this really comes to pass. And if you've heard feet in the background, it's this little angel. So I thought I should get him on there for a minute. Oh, this is very unconventional information. And this map is from Gordon Michael Scallion. In case you didn't know, this is the only map that he did in more detail from around the world. Otherwise, I would do other locations. But this is basically a follow-up to the last video, and it's been requested, can we get more detail on the United States? A lot of people just want more detail on their specific locations. So let me give a quick rundown for those of you that might not have seen any of these videos before. This is highly unconventional. We were given a lot of this information in the 80s. We had no connection to Gordon Michael Scallion, although the information that we were given was oddly similar to his in so many ways. And then the source of a lot of our information, we've been saying that it's from like higher beings, higher guides, some sort of higher intelligence that gave us so much information and verified in dozens and dozens of examples that what they were saying was accurate. And so we took the information pretty seriously. So there's a couple things about that. Right now on the planet, according to what we've been told, the pole shift, as I've been talking about, is coming like in roughly around 2030, cover take a couple years. And we should be kind of through it at that point. So now, I mean, it really is, we're fully into it, but we're going to be ramping up all of it very, very soon. And so the pole shift is essentially locked in. That's going to happen whether we like it or not. The rising consciousness, according to what we were told, is also locked in. Nothing can really change what's going to happen. There is going to be a rising consciousness according to what we were told, which is good news. I mean, I think that's positive. The thing that is not locked in, that is still in the realm of probability, is the severity of Earth changes that are going to take place through this process. And so even if we were told like it could still be up to 70% of what happens, what Gordon Michael Scallion initially predicted, and people will say, well, why didn't his predictions come true? And I've talked about around 2010, there was such a drastic change, not a drastic change, but such a drastic event that was avoided on this planet and in this solar system that would have had intergalactic repercussions. And so that we were put basically on a new event timeline or a new event sequence, or people will call it a new timeline. And it really, what it did was it kind of demonstrated how incredibly reckless and ignorant and really unprepared humanity was for a cataclysmic change. And so I think it was like this kind of dress rehearsal for those beings around this part of the galaxy or whatever that are keeping such a close eye on this planet, and everything that will have to be done in order to get through this process relatively safely without a tremendous amount of contamination throughout this region of the galaxy, and because nuclear power plants going into meltdown and all kinds of other options that can happen. So there was a 20-year delay basically to the whole process, and that's it. I mean, that's according to what we're told, that's it. There will be no more delays. Everything is locked in now. And so barring some fraction of a miracle, fraction of a percent, it's a 1 in a million chance. So you're saying there's a chance, but so there's a maybe the slightest chance out there that some huge intervention could take place that would get us past all of this. But for the most part, this change is taking place, and it's for the betterment of humanity. It's for the betterment of life on this planet, and for our entire galactic neighborhood. It's for the betterment of everyone in the magnetic streams, upstream, downstream. In this model of the magnetic etheric model of the universe, we are intimately connected to other solar systems, and so there's a lot of energy exchange, and that is being contaminated by what's happening on our planet. So that's all going to change, and this pole shift is going to lead to all of that. So I gotta get into this map so you can get some screenshots of this if you want them, especially if you're living in the States right now. And So Gordon Michael Scallion, one of the things he talks about is this like four quake sequence, which is surprisingly similar to the model, the etheric magnetic energy model, where you have earthquakes that take place at different regions around the globe in a relatively short time period. And so a four quake sequence, and that's something that you can look out for if you want to see like signs as to how we're getting close to this. So it could be like something like a large quake, like say an 8.0 or even up to a 9.0, like in Indonesia, and then it may be other regions. It could be around South America, or it could be up toward Japan or even Central America, and then hitting the west coast of the United States. So if we get into that four quake sequence and then it hits the west coast, according to the visions he saw, that is basically the triggering event that leads to this type of crazy amount of change to the United States. Now, if you can see like those red lines right there, these are like different like kind of fall offs areas that happen relatively short over a period of, I don't know, it could be months. And then the Mississippi Valley being inundated from above, and the Great Lakes going into a whole bunch of flooding, and then flooding this whole area. So if you live along these areas and you're curious, and you can take this information like into meditation or prayer and decide, if you think it's pertinent for you to relocate, fine. I mean, that's really the whole point of this, is just to give you detail so you can say, we're relatively safe where we're located, or you know what, wow, we are right in the middle of that flood zone. Let's pray about or meditate about relocating. Now you can see in Canada, there's some interesting inundation with water in Canada, but a lot of it is, I mean, it is fairly still there, as far as it, depending on, I guess, what areas of Canada you are. And if you're in Alberta and Saskatchewan, obviously you're fine. But there's a weird inundation of water, like up in this area. And then, of course, down in Florida, if you look over here, and you look like where Tampa is, obviously that's on the coast, so that's fairly significant. And then Orlando looks pretty safe. It's relatively inland. And then you can kind of look around the Carolinas and see how water moves in all the way up to Atlanta. And then along the East Coast, he talks about tremendous like flooding along the East Coast. And part of this is in his whole vision. If you didn't see the other video, he has this whole vision, which is along the magnetic model, as well as other land masses being pushed and pulled to the surface and rising up, that bring a new resonant energy to the earth, a higher vibratory resonance, if you want to say, to the earth. And so as those land masses move up, a lot of flooding takes place on existing land masses. So that's kind of a big deal. This is interesting, just as a side note, years ago, I was taken in an out-of-body experience above the Rocky Mountains, and this whole map was on my mind, and I was talking with guides, if you will, about how would it be possible for this process to take place, because this is so dramatic, it's hard even to comprehend how this could happen. And basically the vision, if you want to call it that I was shown, was as the land masses, as they fall and they go, basically it's like dominoes falling into place, and they fill in the holes that were created from the fall from the first landmass. Am I getting that out okay? But the vision was so dramatic and so overwhelming because the sound of mountains basically collapsing upon each other in the rock. I mean, the sound will be heard for miles and miles. The shaking of the earth will be heard or will be felt for hundreds of miles. This is so incredibly dramatic if this happens, and hopefully this doesn't happen, but it's wow is all I could say. The vision shook me for a long time, left me really shaken, and it was very intense. So I just hope and pray that this doesn't happen, and there's something maybe in consciousness or something that will make this much less severe than this. And then if you look along the coast, the west coast, and you can look up into like Olympian and Washington and then Portland and Seattle and these areas, obviously the coast takes pretty strong hits with all of this, and so it's, if you're in a coastal location, that's something to consider. Hawaii takes some pretty significant hits, but it still remains, there's still some mountaintops and islands there. And then California becomes renamed as the California Islands. And so you've got a lot going on the United States. And you could say this is the end of the United States as we know it. If this happens, there will definitely be a reformation, I'm sure, of government and different territory things and everything. This is going to change radically, but you got to keep in mind, though, if we really are moving into a higher consciousness, then that really impacts how all of that plays out in terms of politics and in terms of economy, and then if we get magnetic energy on board, we really start moving into a much better standard of living, higher standard of civilization, and everything. So I just felt like that it was my responsibility to show this and get it up close. I'm sure many of you have probably seen this map before, but hopefully this will give you a good screenshot where you can get detail and zoom in on areas that you want to. And with that, I will see you next time.